All right, so welcome and thank you for joining us tonight for our next program in our travel series. We're excited to have Kaitlyn Jain with us today to talk about traveling with children. Please post any questions you have in the chat and we'll get to them at the end of the program. So I'm going to start by introducing Kaitlyn. She is an author, world traveler, and mom to her 4 young and slightly feral kids. She has visited over 25 countries, over 6 continents, dragging her kids whenever she can. She's a frequent guest on parenting and travel podcasts, and she recently published her first book, Passports and Pacifiers, Traveling the World One Tantrum at a Time, and is featured in Chicken Soup for the Soul BU. So Kaitlyn, we are so welcome to have you. So happy to have you. I am going to turn it over to you. I'm going to turn off my camera and my microphone, and I'll be back at the end of your presentation to field questions for you.
Great, thank you so much. I am going to share my screen. So give me 1 second while I pull this up. All right. So thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really excited to be here. And thank you to the Fort Worth Public Library for having me. I'm excited to be here because I'm here to talk about 2 of my favorite things, which are traveling and kids. And I really feel strongly about the 2 of them together. So I'm happy to be here. My goal tonight is to inspire you to travel and hopefully get some helpful tips to make it easier. So let's get started. So everywhere is somewhere new to somebody. And so I have a few photos here. I traveled to Texas when I was in high school. It was one of my first flights that I had ever taken. I'm originally from Michigan. And so although my parents traveled a lot, it was all in the family station wagon. So we would drive up and down the East Coast. We would go to Florida, and we would travel all across the country in our car. So I traveled to Dallas, Texas. And so I know that's relatively close to Fort Worth. But to me, as a Michigander, it was very different. It was so hot. And it was my first experience with like really, really cold air conditioning. So we would travel from our hotel in the extreme heat and then go to a freezing cold place to play volleyball. And so, it might seem like that's the norm to you, but, everywhere is somewhere new to somebody. And so in college, I roomed with a couple girls from Texas. One was from San Antonio. So she took me to the Alamo. I drove cross country with her. And, Texas is just a really cool place. So I'm really excited to be here and share some of my experiences with you. So the first time I traveled abroad was to Australia to study abroad. And that was as a junior in college. And again, this was a huge culture shock because a lot of the time as Americans, we are the center of the universe. And so it's interesting to see, perception of others that they have of Americans. And so when I studied in Australia, I was in close with a lot of Australian friends. I'm still in touch with many of them. And it was just a great experience to be a part of a new culture, see how life is in another country. And fortunately for me, Australia is, they speak English. And that's part of the reason I went there. But, there's just so much in this world to see. And so once I traveled to Australia, lived there for 6 months, the bug was I had been bitten by the bug. And so after that trip to Australia, it was a goal to visit a new country every year for me. And as Jennifer mentioned, I visited 25 plus countries because I wanted to go see a new country every year. So I'm not well off. And so to do that, it took a lot of saving. It took a lot of, finding deals and just, making sure that I could do it to fit that goal. And so the year after Australia, I traveled to France in the middle of winter because in the middle of winter, they offer buy one, get one free flights. And so you can visit Paris, on the cheap. And then I traveled to Greece as a chaperone with my brother for some high school students. So that was a great experience as well. And then there were just a lot of countries doing things like that, finding deals and, just hounding the discount airfare sites. And then, when I met my husband, he understood that it was important to me to be able to travel. So we found deals together, and, we did this together. We went to Ecuador for our honeymoon, which was an excursion, but after that, it was back to finding a deal. And then when I got pregnant with my first, I said, why don't we take her somewhere? Why don't we see if we can take our baby? I don't want to be separated from her, but I don't want to stop travel. So we took our first daughter, Brooklyn, to Italy. And then we traveled with our second daughter to Belize and the Azores and, all over the place, Ireland, Bahamas, Guatemala. And, it's just important for us to show our kids the world. And now I have 4 children, and we took our kids to Scandinavia. I'll talk more about that later. But when I was on that trip, some things happened, and it was a little crazy, but it was amazing. And I thought, why don't more people do this? Why don't people take their kids when they travel? And, is it something that is just overwhelming, or is there another reason? Because we were having the time of our lives. And so how can I encourage others to travel? And so on that trip was when Passports and Pacifiers came to be. So first, I'd like to introduce you to my family. My husband is AJ, and he is a big runner, and he loves to eat. So I talk about that a lot in my book, because when you are married to a runner that likes destinations, that's where your vacation is going to be. So he has a goal of running 50 marathons in 50 states by the time he's 50. So we will be visiting all 50 states. Texas, I think, was his second or third. We took baby Brooklyn there when she was a year old. And so the goal is to visit all 50 states with our kids so that he can run a marathon. And he also likes to eat, which is great when you travel because then you're trying new foods. My daughter Brooklyn is now 10 in this photo. She's the one in purple, and she loves ice cream. That's how we get her to travel. And she does not sleep, which can be pretty troubling on a trip. My daughter Ella is in pink. She's 8. And although she is an absolute dream today, she's super caring and wonderful. When we traveled, she was not very pleasant. And in my book, I called her the screech owl because she would cry a lot. My son Lucas is 6. He's a mama's boy. And as you can see in the photo, he's very attached to me. And then my daughter Sienna is the baby. And in the book, she is the baby, the entire book. So there we are with 4 kids in Scotland in this photo. And, as I tell you these things, you could say that these are, the kids are not perfect by any means. And, we ran into our share of trouble, but it was completely worth it. So why travel with kids? It's for the photos. No, it's not for the photos, but that is a nice effect from traveling with the kids. I love travel. It's my passion. It's something I've been passionate about for the past 20 years. And so to me, if you're passionate about something, share it with your kids. And if I want to be traveling, I want my kids with me. I want to share that experience with them. And I want them to see something that you're passionate about. It's also why I take my kids to go watch my husband do his races, because I think it's important for them to see something that you're passionate about so that they can see that in life and, be inspired by their own goals. They might not like travel when they get older, but they'll like something and they'll be able to see their parents followed their dreams. I love wildlife, being in nature, seeing new things, trying new foods. And, it's important for me to share that with my kids as well. Second, I love being around my kids. When my daughter was born, I just assumed she would travel with me. Why wouldn't she travel? I couldn't imagine leaving her, and I definitely didn't want to give up travel. Additionally, I work full time. So to me, if you have your vacation time, take your kid with you, because when you're not working, you want to be with your kids. Fortunately, I've been working from home, so I do have that flexibility, but which I imagine that a lot of people have right now. but it's important for me to have that family time, and it's an opportunity for your family to form those memories together. Third, and this is the most important reason to me, though it's listed third because it isn't really the reason why I did it in the first place, the kids get so much out of it. It's incredible to see your kids' raw reaction to seeing a wild monkey, to holding an iguana, or kissing the Blarney Stone. It's amazing to hear your kid ask if that's Elsa's castle. When you travel with kids, you get to show them the world, teach them about life, and you get to have fun while you're doing it. I think it's critical to expose our kids to new things and to show them what we're passionate about. And since I'm passionate about travel, that's what it is with my kids. And if you are here, I think that you might feel the same way. All right, so let me talk about some benefits to traveling with kids. You can see my iguana photo here of Brooklyn feeding the iguana, the family in Scandinavia, the Bahamas, and then my husband carrying 2 kids on the beach. So the benefits are that you get to see and try new things. Your kids will get to see and try new things, and they'll have these experiences, and you'll have these experiences as a family and their family memories. My kids love going through my phone, seeing all the photos of all the places that they've been. And, the experience is just amazing. The second is to expand their perspective. When your kids see things that are different from what they see at home, they ask about it and they want to know more. They want to know why somebody talks different. They want to know why somebody looks different, and why they eat different food. So it really expands their perspective, and to see that the world is not just their little town, but it's a whole world. And that's very important to me as a parent to give that to my children. They learn compassion. When they're around different things, they see how things are done differently. I will get to a story in a little bit about how other cultures show compassion, and just how people treat each other in a different culture. And then, of course, experiencing those different cultures, they get to hear different languages and be around different experiences. So, and for me, one of the most important is being together as a family and forming those memories together. As parents, we experience life again through the eyes of our children. And sometimes that may involve, terrible moments that bring back some things from your past. But I've found that more often we get to relive the highlights. So when we see our kid, seeing a whale for the first time, we remember the first time that we may have seen it as a kid. Or when I drove across country with my kids this past summer, it reminded me of when I traveled with my parents across country. So it's just like holidays or any other thing with your family, you're creating these new memories that will be with them for the rest of their lives. And yes, sometimes there are tantrums and things don't go according to plan, but like raising kids, travel with them is rewarding. It's entertaining, it's memorable, and it's awe-inspiring. And I, for one, will take those occasional meltdowns for the opportunity to see my kids' raw reaction to feeding an iguana, seeing a castle, or any of these other experiences that they may have. So, of course, it's not all rainbows. And in my book, I talk about a lot of lessons learned. As a parent, you have a lot of lessons that you learn. And while traveling, it's no different. In this photo, you can see that, we're sleeping on an airplane. Didn't always go this smoothly. We have a daughter crying in the bottom corner, having her meltdown. She's got her pacifier in her mouth. There are definitely things that can go wrong. The first is that you can overspend. So the lesson learned here is just to make sure that you set a budget. And just like any other travel that you do, it's critical to know how much you want to spend and where you want to spend that money. Some people may want to fly first class. I want to travel as cheap as I can and spend my money on experiences. Some people want to eat out. So just make sure that you know what your budget is going in so that you can make sure that you fit that budget. Misbehaving kids, it's going to happen. It happens every day as a parent. And so just understanding that your kids may misbehave. And when they go through jet lag, that throws them off of their routine. So, being prepared for that, understanding what you're going to do when that happens is critical. Carry candy if you need them to stop that crying right away. Have some areas for timeouts if that's what you choose to do. And just make sure that you spend some one-on-one time with them so that you can have those things for when your kid is thrown off their routine. And I think probably most important is understanding that there's going to be a little bit of jet lag. And so making sure that they get enough sleep. My husband and I found that when our kids get 3 essential things, enough sleep, the right kind of food, and exercise, they tend to behave, even while traveling. So although not every baby likes to fly and not every kid will eat whatever they're given, with those 3 critical components, we found that for the most part, they behave. And I say for the most part, because as you can see, they don't always behave, but they don't always behave at home. So I, for one, would rather be in Scandinavia or Ireland or doing something new and cool than just with my kid at the grocery store when they're having that tantrum. So that to me is important. Also, just making sure that you don't overschedule. Having a fear of missing out can be, is definitely a lesson learned. And those days when you might have overscheduled something, tried to fit everything in, that's a good problem to have. But just making sure that you plan to stay a little bit longer than you might have done without kids. Add in some free time for those times where you may have had a meltdown and you don't want to miss out on doing something important. You can reschedule it for later. Or realize that, after your kids are big, you may have to go back. If it's somewhere that you really wanted to do something, you may have to go back at some point. And again, it's not a bad problem to have. All right. So I wanted to get into some tips for traveling with kids so that, some real tangible tips here. First, make sure you pack your kids. Make sure that you bring them along. This is my daughter, Ella, and my son, Lucas. They decided they wanted to come and they packed themselves. The first thing I will say is to minimize your luggage. You do not need as much stuff as you think that you need. So make sure to pack what you need, but not more than you can carry. This is really, really critical because a lot of people think that they need to bring every baby item. They need to bring the crib. They need to bring the stroller. They need to bring, all the food and the car seat and the high chair and every little thing. But our kids don't need quite as much as we think that they need. And so just make sure that you can carry whatever you bring. Generally, you don't need to bring a crib with you. Hotels generally have them, especially if you're flying the place that you're going. Many Airbnbs will get them for you if you just ask. Or you can just create your own, depending on the age of the kid. You can just put some pillows on the bed or put them on the floor. It's not as critical as it might seem that it is. And my family only brings car seats if we're actually renting a car for multiple days. So if we are flying to a major city, we do not bring car seats because that's one extra thing to carry. So the example I gave earlier of when I went to Italy with a 1-year-old, we did not bring a car seat because we were going to be taking a train between places and we were just going to be in the major cities without a need for actually riding in a taxi. We also did not even bring a stroller when we had only one kid. I love carrying my babies. So I had the Moby wrap. I had the Ergo carrier that would put a kid on my back. So we actually never even brought a stroller unless we had multiple kids. And the stroller could do double duty as carrying our bags as well. So my number one thing for packing is make sure that you do not overpack and that you can carry everything that you're bringing. I make sure that I start early, and I personally start at least a week in advance. And the reason for that is in case you don't have something, then you have time to order it. You have time for it to get to you. So I will always make a list and start packing at least a week in advance. A couple critical items is I bring two pairs of shoes, because when you travel with kids, they find a way to get their feet wet. I don't know why it is, but they find some creek to put their feet in, or they somehow walk in some puddle. So I always bring at least two pairs of shoes. That's a recommendation. Always bring a swimsuit. You do not want to be that parent that says, oh, we'd go swimming if we had our suits. So even though you're not planning to swim, I secretly stash it. And almost always there's a pool at the hotel, at the Y across the street, or somewhere. So those are my two critical things, along with making sure you have a pair of pants and a sweatshirt, because you never know when the weather is going to be a little colder than you imagine, or you're going to be in Texas maybe and have the super cold air conditioning. We bring a laundry or a wet bag and try to make sure to do laundry at least once per trip, so that you can bring half as much stuff as if you hadn't done laundry. And I think one of the most important things is to let the kids bring a backpack with some kind of book, toy, animal, blanket, something that they have as their own thing. I have a line in my book, pacifiers aren't just the physical object a baby puts in her mouth to suckle. These are the things that soothe us, our comforts of home. So my husband always brings a pair of running shoes so that he can run on our trip. As you can see, my daughter Ella always brought her pacifier. Just make sure that the kids have a little piece of home with them when you travel. You don't want to bring their most valuable thing in case they lose it. But if they have something that is theirs, it also teaches them a little bit of responsibility, that that's the thing that they are responsible for. So that is some of my packing tips. Flying with kids. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we bring car seats if we're renting a car. And one bit of advice is if you can drive a stick shift, you'll save a lot of money. So when you travel to Europe, they will give you the manual, which is half the price. It's dramatically cheaper. So when you travel to Europe, that's another cost saving thing. So we will bring car seats if we're renting a car, but that doesn't necessarily mean we take it on the plane. That is a personal decision on whether you want to have the car seat. As you can see from this photo, in one, my daughter is, I think, just under 2, and she's sleeping in my husband's lap. And in the next photo, she has her car seat on the plane because we had an extra seat, so we put her in that. So some parents love the car seats on airplanes because it keeps your kid in one place. But for us, we wouldn't necessarily do it unless there's an extra seat, because the car seats take up so much space that we can have a little more leg room if you don't have the car seat. So you can also take it to the actual gate just to see if there's an extra seat there, and then check it at the gate, or you can check it at the beginning when you're checking your luggage, because it's relatively easy to do. It's easier if you have a bag to put your car seat into so that it doesn't get damaged, but we haven't had any damage yet, but obviously it could get damaged. And you can bring your stroller all the way to the gate and gate check it as well. A couple other things is, how do we manage an 8-hour, 10-hour flight with our kids? What do you do to keep them entertained? And I think the first thing is electronics. And a lot of people will bring their own. A lot of international flights have electronics that if you just plug your headphones in, you can play little games and do all of that. Most international flights are overnight, so hopefully your kid will sleep on the plane, and that's another way to get through some of the nights. One of the things that I love to do is to bring lots of snacks and little toys to occupy their time. So the snacks that we'll bring are generally the smaller ones, like the Cheerios or the goldfish, so that they have to eat them one at a time. And, you can really space it out and give them, one or two at a time when they're little. Um, that's something that can definitely pass the time a little bit. One thing that I discovered on our latest flight was an inflatable footrest, which is really, really cool. Some airlines don't allow it, but others do. This is basically a footrest that you can blow up on board, and it goes between your seat and the seat in front of you, and it turns the kid's seat into like a bed. And not every airline allows it, but the one that we flew definitely did allow it. And so then they can sleep. It's just like a full bed, like a first class seat for your child. So that was a pretty cool find that I had last time. I also like to take photos of the map so that I can get around the place when I land, because I'm going to be a little tired. So if I have a photo of the place, if my phone, the Wi-Fi is not working, then I can know where I'm going right away. With regards to parking at the airport, I have a few tips for that. There's different things that you can do. You can park at the airport, you can take a cab there. Uber is a great option, but when you have multiple kids, it can get expensive, because my family, for instance, requires an extra large car, which is an extra large price. And we are 45 minutes from the closest airport. And so that's a minimum of over $100. And so a couple other options are to get a ride, and that allows us to keep the car seats that we have. And if we hire like the kid's babysitter to drive the car back, or, a close friend will drive us, we're driving our own car, but we're not paying the prices of, an Uber. Also, you can park at the airport, which is the most convenient. And so it's the best if you have like a short flight. And the last, which is a trick that I figured out a few years ago, was hotel parking. And this is actually a really cheap option. And many of those places offer warm cookies. So you park at the hotel and you leave your car there, you pay a set rate, and it's just like your guest at the hotel. You get the cookies for the kids, use the bathroom, and then they shuttle you over to the airport. So that is something really cool, and an option that I think is really good for families. All right, so we have not flown for a little while. So car travel is where we have been for the past year and a half. This photo is from Ireland, when we rented a car to visit my mother-in-law's home country. And so here we are in Ireland. As I mentioned earlier, getting a manual or stick shift can save a lot of money. But with regards to car travel, the first thing I will say is to always make sure that you have a towel in your car and an easy access change of clothes. One of my children, baby Sienna, likes to throw up in the car. And so just making sure that you have stuff to clean up, you have bags, all of that stuff. If you have that kid who's car sick, they do it on airplanes. So just make sure that in your car you have the same type of stuff. And when you're in the car too, another easy tip is to pack one bag that has one night stay. So when we traveled across the country this past summer, we had, the backpack that would have one change of clothes for everyone, so that we wouldn't have to unload the car every single night. It was just the nights that we were there for multiple nights. So making sure that you have different options for packing is something that can be really helpful. Same as flying, making sure that you have easy to reach snacks, and making sure that each kid has their own cup so that you can quickly and easily give it to them, the snacks that they need. I've found that having a co-pilot, which is generally my husband, is something that can be very, very helpful on trips. One person's driving and one person is managing the kids, which usually we're fighting over who gets to drive because it's such an easy job compared to taking care of the kids sometime. And for us, with the kid who likes to throw up in the car, is having the car sick medicine, testing it out beforehand to make sure that she'll take it, and, doing other things. One thing that I wanted to point out is that driving during the nap time or at night, if you can be very, very helpful. And if you're driving far and you're not sure where you're going to stop, so if you have a 16-hour drive, you have 2 days to make it, getting a list of potential hotels or enlisting the co-pilot or family member to book for you is something that can really help, because you don't know if there's going to be a hotel for you an hour from there. So just making sure that you have some ideas in mind, especially if you have multiple kids and you want to get 2 rooms or suite, just trying to do that planning in advance. All right, I mentioned naps. So this is my daughter, Brooklyn, the one who did not sleep. She did only like to sleep when on somebody. So we would when we travel, we break up the day with naps. And with small kids, we found that sleep is just so critical to them that, we would plan our whole day around it. So the morning we would do an activity, we would stop for naps, and then in the afternoon we do a different activity. So if you're traveling between multiple places, that is a good time to drive. Have them sleep in the car or on the train in this example, but really just focusing on those naps so that you can have 2 really, really fun activities and you're not just trying to drag out the entire day. So we found that to be really, really helpful. So yeah, I found the statistic that parents lose 44 days or over 1,000 hours of sleep in the first year of an infant's life. And I completely believe it. With my first, she was just such a terrible sleeper that it's really hard as a new parent. But I do think it's important to make sure that you are still doing the things that you're passionate about for all the reasons I listed earlier. So when we're traveling, plan for the nap. And if we are staying at the hotel, we would go back to the hotel and we would put the kids down for a nap. One example is when we went to Acadia National Park in Maine. It's really, really beautiful if you haven't been. But when we went there, we had 2 small children, one that was, I think, 2.5, and one that was 4. And so we would do a really good hike in the morning, exhaust them. They'd take a nap. And then in the afternoon, we would go whale watching, or we'd go for a walk along the beach or swimming or whatever it was. So it felt like they got 2 full days. My husband and I got a break, and maybe the person who didn't need to put them down for a nap got to have some time to themselves. One day, I remember I went to the pool by myself. It was just relaxing. So just make sure that you schedule that time for naps if you're traveling with small children. It's just something that's really critical. And along with that is making sure that you have a flexible itinerary. I use a spreadsheet to plan for longer trips, where I put my hotels in and some restaurants I might want to eat at, or the activity, or whatever it is. And so each day has a must-do and optional activities. The playground is optional, but it's kind of cool. But seeing Pisa is not optional. We're going to go do that, and we're going to get the photo. And it's important to have a backup plan. So know the purpose of your trip and be adaptable. The photo here is from Copenhagen, and as you can see, it's raining. In the morning, we look out the window and it's pouring down, and I asked Brooklyn, what do you want to do today? And I gave her a few different options, and she said, I want to go to the aquarium. And that was not part of our original plan. We were going to walk around the city or go to Tivoli Gardens, but we went to the aquarium because it was indoors, and she absolutely loved it. Then my husband took the 2 little ones and he put them down for a nap, and I wanted to do something fun with them. So we went for a boat ride, and taking a 1-year-old on a boat ride in this weather probably would not have been very pleasant. But taking my 2 older ones, they got to wear the ponchos, they got to have the ice cream, and they just absolutely loved it. So just be flexible with your planning and have some backup opportunities so that when things don't go right, when the weather doesn't cooperate, your whole trip isn't ruined, but you can do something fun, and just be open to the possibilities. So where to stay? As I mentioned, my oldest was a terrible sleeper. And at home, we got into these very strict routines. We had to do this routine to get her to sleep. And so traveling kind of throws a wrench into that, especially with jet lag. Although I will say that when I flew to Texas with her at 10 months, that was the first time she ever slept for over 6 hours. So that flight, I was very grateful for it. But traveling and finding a hotel that meets your needs can be stressful and it can be hard, especially with multiple kids. So with 4 kids, this is critical. If there's not enough space, your kids drive you crazy. And then if you go for the best, you pay too much. So how do you find that happy medium that is in the right location, is the right price, is the right space, and ideally offers you free breakfast or has a pool or something, that helps with being a parent as well. My family, we like traveling to hotels, and we've been able to find suites at many of the major chains. And to us, it's critical to have a door in that room. So you can have the kids sleeping in the beds, and then you have that door so that the older kids can stay awake. Maybe one of us could read or whatever it is, but having that separation is critical for us. So don't be afraid to call the hotel and say, do you actually have a door in this room? Or maybe they'll have a map online. And along with that, I will say be critical or skeptical of the room limits. And sometimes with smaller kids, you can fit in one room when it doesn't seem like you can. So we like to book through hotels.com because they have a really good reward system where you stay 10 nights, you get one free. And so they generally max out at 4 per room. But if you call the hotel, they'll say, oh, kids stay free. You can have as many as, 4 kids, 5 kids, whatever. So just be a little bit skeptical of what the room limits are when you're in the United States. When I traveled abroad, it's not quite as flexible. And they are very strict on room limits in certain countries because of the fire code. But in the US, generally, I have found that as long as you call the hotel to make sure, sometimes you can book for a smaller number than are actually staying in the room. And so, we'll make that reservation, and it's not as comfortable as being in 2 rooms, but it can work for just one night. And if you are driving, another thing to consider bringing is a fold-up cot from home so that you can fit your child in the room, even if it's, not quite as comfortable if it's just for one night. So as I mentioned, the international rooms, they are generally a little bit smaller. So we like to do Airbnbs as well abroad, but just hotels offer free breakfast when you have kids. And then they also offer a pool, which can be very helpful for kids because it's something to entertain them. I know a lot of people like camping, and that is definitely the cheapest option in many times. So if you are that type, I would definitely recommend it. And you have the opportunity to camp in so many different places, especially in the United States. So that is another way that you can save some money. As I mentioned earlier, find a place that does laundry because that can be critical on a trip. Meal planning is another one that's critical. So for us, we generally do 2 large meals and snacks. And the first is the free hotel breakfast, which we found to be very, very helpful. And then having just a big dinner and lots of snacks. Get some bread if you're on the road, peanut butter and jelly. Although I will say that peanut butter is considered a liquid when flying, so you have to actually check it, which I have learned the hard way. And they don't sell it abroad generally. So if you want peanut butter on the trip, make sure that you pack it in your checked luggage. And, generally, a lot of the times kids can be picky eaters. So when we travel abroad with our picky eater, which in this picture is my oldest, she's eating pasta for the first time because every culture has some kind of staple, whether it's pasta or potatoes or rice or my kid's favorite, crepes. There's generally going to be something bland that you can find for them. And your spouse and you can order something a little more exciting. You can try 2 different things, but just making sure that you have that pasta, pizza, whatever, like every culture has it. So that is something that has been a saving grace for us when traveling abroad, is just having that bland food for the kids. All right. Make sure you book early, and just try to book as early as you can. A lot of the time for hotels, it can be cancelable. And this summer, as I mentioned, we did a massive road trip, and so it was going to be a few weeks on the road. So in February, I booked all of our hotels. The credit card wouldn't be charged until we actually traveled, and everything was fully cancelable. And so that's an opportunity to, book early. And then if your plans change, great, no big deal. And flights are a lot more flexible than they have been in the past. So of course, look at what the rules are. But with hotels, usually you can book early and have that flexibility, because it is challenging with kids to know what's going to happen 6 months from now, as we've all seen. But if you book early with something that's fully cancelable, you have the opportunity to do something a little more fun. Some flight tips. We like to do the credit cards with the miles so that we can fly for free sometimes. And we also get our luggage for free. So if we have a certain airline's credit card, then we get our luggage free, and everyone traveling on the ticket gets a free bag. So that is one way definitely to save money while flying. I mentioned the hotels.com. If you stay for 10 nights, then you get 1 night free. I use a site called Ebates, where I get a percentage back on every dollar that I spend. There's just a lot of things like that. And another thing when you travel with kids, especially younger kids, is that you have more flexibility. And so when we traveled to Italy, we traveled just off season. So we went to Italy in May, which was a month before all the school age kids would get out. And we were able to go for so much cheaper just because we traveled in May. And when my family went to Scandinavia with our 4 kids, which you would think would be very expensive, we traveled the last week in August. My kids didn't go back to school till September, so we went like 2 weeks before that. And the kids in Scandinavia had gone back to school, so the airline was offering a kids fly free discount. So we got to have all 4 of our children fly for free. My husband and I got reasonable tickets, and it was, less than around $1,000 or whatever for our entire family to fly to Scandinavia. So look out for deals, because there are opportunities out there if you're willing to just be a little bit off season, or just go a little bit off of what you would prefer to do. And a lot of times kids are free, and there's just so many things that you might not know about, but you just have to ask. So let me just give you a couple examples. Places don't advertise it. Hotels, they're almost always free. Kids stay free, almost, period. When you fly, if your child is under 2, they fly free using your seat. And if they're under 1, you can book the bulkhead, and so they get to sleep in a crib right in front of your seat, and you don't even have them on your lap. And if the flight is underbooked, they will let you bring your car seat on, and so you have your baby with you, and you only paid for 1 seat. So under 2, they fly free. Under 3, usually for aquariums, zoos, that type of thing. And they offer little discounts as well if your child's under a certain age. So when you travel with a small kid, they can be free or significantly discounted. Public transportation, they're almost always free. And when we were in Helsinki, under 7 was free. So I had 3 kids that were free, and the parent is free if they're pushing a stroller. So I've never seen so many strollers in my life on transit, except in Helsinki, because every parent that was pushing a stroller got to go on the transportation for free. So there are so many opportunities for your kids to be free that it makes your travel the same price as if it was just adults traveling. And I just want to give a shout out that this past summer, as I mentioned, we traveled out west, And the reason we did it is that my daughter was in 4th grade last year. And so we signed up for something through the national parks called the 4th grade pass. And that allows a 4th grader to visit any national park, any national monument for free. And any family member that's with them gets to go. So we traveled to 11 state or national parks, and all of those were free. So it was pretty exciting to get to see the country, get to see all these different national parks. It wasn't crowded. So it was our first time back into travel for a while. And we were all free because of my 4th grade daughter. My parents also have a senior discount, so we get to go to the national parks with them for free. So a couple quick tips. So yeah, I know I've painted a good picture here, and I do recognize that things will go wrong, but as I mentioned earlier, those things will happen at home just as much as they'll happen abroad. And I have a story in my book of a time that my daughter Ella had a meltdown when we left a restaurant. And so she's melting down in the street, and I had a woman come up to me speaking a different language, recognized we spoke English, and she got down on my daughter's eye level and just spoke to her nicely. And, then a man came over and started talking to her, and a third man, and it was just the way their culture treated my daughter when she was having her meltdown. It taught me a lot about how Finland is. And it was just a really cool experience because, as I said, like, this happens at home, but recognizing that things can go wrong. You're going to miss the ferry. You could miss your alarm. But that's part of life. And, I try to have an optimistic view and, just focus on the positive that, we're with our family and we're experiencing this together. We're making some really great memories. So, yes, things will go wrong, but I think with a positive attitude, you can make the best of it. And, we just have some flexibility and try to find some things that, will be a little better. So I will close it out by saying that the most important things are to balance careful planning with spontaneity. So you can see my first sketch of what we wanted to do this summer. I have all the days plotted out, but just having that spontaneity built in there. The photo in the bottom right is of a place called Crater of the Moon National Park in Idaho. And I had never heard of it, maybe 2 hours before this photo was taken, but I saw a sign for it and looked it up in my book. And I said, let's go there. It's only 20 minutes out of the way. And it was such a cool experience to be in this place. Just having that spontaneity and the ability and that flexibility, it just really made that day. So I will just end by saying, bring a positive attitude and a sense of humor, and you really can't go wrong by traveling with kids. So thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed speaking to you, and I will open it up for questions.
So if you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. We do have Kaitlyn's book here at the library. You can check it out. I put the link in the chat. I also put a link in the chat to the National Park Pass that she was talking about. So do we have any questions? So while they're thinking about their questions, I have one for you. So what is your one place you really want to go to that you haven't been able to go yet?
That's a great question. The place I'm most excited to go is to Africa with my kids. I can't wait to take a safari and maybe go to Kruger National Park or Kenya or a place like that. It's super expensive, and so just have to figure out how to budget for it, how to save for it. But that's the thing I'm probably most excited to do.
Well, that sounds really exciting. Mine is Greece, which you've already been. So that's my bucket list. So all right. Well, I think if we don't have any questions, then we're going to kind of close it out for the evening. I do want to share that if you would like to purchase a copy of Kaitlyn's book instead of checking it out from the library, you can get a copy at the Doc Bookshop. This is their contact information. They are one of our local independents here in Fort Worth. So we do have one question. Oh, and it looks like somebody has sent me some emails, which I have not been checking, so I'll look at that. Have any of your children asked to go somewhere?
Oh, they love travel. I mean, their favorite place to travel is to Michigan, which is where my parents are, or really any trip that I can convince my parents to go on. You know, they enjoy traveling, and it's been tricky the past year and a half when we haven't been able to travel as much. But yeah, I'm trying to think where they want to go. They love wherever we take them.
So we have some questions about the actual publication of your book. Can you talk about how you got a publisher, how you kind of got your book deal a little bit and got it published?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I came up with the idea when I was traveling to Scandinavia, and I spent the next couple of years writing it. And when the pandemic hit, it was just kind of like this is now or never. Like let's take care of this. And so it was a lot of editing. I hired my editor and hired my designer, and just worked with different people in my community and had some great resources, and really just set about getting it done when the pandemic hit, because it was just an opportunity to just take a step back. I wasn't going to be traveling for a while, and just get it out there. And just worked with some of the really cool, good reviewers, sent it out to them, and had some great feedback. And so it was trying to remember who it was, but like Midwest Book Review and Kirkus, and just getting their feedback. And it's been out for maybe like 9 months now, but really the pandemic is the thing that was just like, nope, let's do it now. So and one thing that was really cool, I just found out yesterday, is this picture that's up. This was taken in Ireland, and one of my neighbors was like, "Where was that photo taken?" And he's like, "Is it Ireland? That's my family's ancestral castle," or whatever. And so, it's cool to, I wanted the cover to be a little more generic. Like, clearly, it's a woman traveling with her kids, but it's not necessarily me. It could be anybody with their kids, like in someplace really cool. So it's cool to see it's a recognizable place by apparently my neighbor.
And do you do your own social media, or do you have somebody who manages that kind of stuff for you?
I do my own social media. It's something that I've been working on, and just learning as I go. So I'm working on book number 2. So maybe when I get further along with that, but yeah, I do my own social.
All right. And so last question. Do you have, for those who are hard to buy for, do you have any suggestions on a well-selected book that you might give as a gift?
That's a tough question. I love classics, and I've been reading a lot of historical fiction, and I love the historical fiction because it's kind of like traveling. You're traveling to a different place, and a lot of different cultures. I love Kristen Hanna right now, and trying to think. I love Bill Bryson's books. Those are kind of like classics. Like, if you find the good ones. I read In a Sunburnt Country right before I went to Australia, just because it's like, oh, this is a book about Australia. So really any, those are some of my favorite travel books, and, but historical fiction as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being with us tonight. And I want to thank our audience for attending and all their great questions. And y'all have a nice evening. Thank you.
Thank you.